Wrestle, 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 hard. Wrestle, 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 hard. Wrestle, 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 hard.
And welcome back to Wrestling Mindset. Today we're here with two-time world bronze medalist, the pride of San Marino, Team Amine, none other than Myles Amine. What's going on, brother?
Team Amine, baby. You know, I had to have my hat on today. I'm doing great. Yeah, excited to be on here.
I was hoping you would. Great stuff. Great stuff. So talk about it. World Championships, a couple weeks ago. How did you feel? What was your mindset going in? How do you prepare for all of this mentally? Take the floor.
So, I think that first of all, when, we go way back, right? Wrestling Mindset, you guys work with my high school and stuff. And just the importance of mindset, I think it really has shaped my career, and going into this world championship, it was no different. I think just preparation wise, as far as the physical training, there were some things that we really honed in on, but the difference maker was just having that kind of mindset going into the worlds, which for me was just trying to keep myself as calm as possible, and remind myself that, these big stages are something that I'm pretty used to at this point. And ultimately, when the lights are on and when I have this saying to myself, the bigger the moment, the better the miles. And so that's kind of the mentality I had going into this world championships. And, the preparation was there. And I think that's what allowed me to have the confidence, and then to stack it on top of that, the right mindset. We were happy. We had a great performance, and I had a great performance, but then now we were just saying before the show started, like, it's kind of some motivation, and kind of now, just hopefully a trampoline into this next year going into the Olympics.
Absolutely. What does the preparation look like for that? Of course, like physically, but also mentally. How do you get yourself ready? How do you anticipate the moment, and not just the moment, but also the whole thing? Because with the Olympics, a lot of hoopla going on, right? So obviously you enjoy the experience, but you don't want to get sucked too much into that hype and that fan mentality. Talk about that a little.
Yeah, that's really important, right? Kind of question is how do you go into a big event knowing it's a big event, but not treating it like a big event, right? Because ultimately, if you go into it with that mindset that it's do or die and that this is everything, at least from my personal experience, that's what forces me to tense up and not perform my best. So I was really intentional about going to this world championships and just saying, where I'm at in my career and what I've done, ultimately, I'm enjoying the ride at this point. And it's almost like a trick for your mind, right? Because I forget who I was discussing this with, but I was like, you almost have to like act like you don't care about losing until after you lose. And then you should care a lot about it. But like going into the match, you should be like, hey, if I lose, I lose. Like at the end of the day, it's just a wrestling match. And I am who I am. Like this isn't going to define me, right? This moment's not going to define me. I still have, a lot of different things that, I hold myself, kind of as an individual, not just as a wrestler. And so this doesn't hold me up, right? This isn't what's going to, break the foundation if I go out there and lose one wrestling match. So you have to treat that mentality, or you have to treat it with that mentality going out there, is that it doesn't matter as much as you really are making it. And ultimately, when you come off the mat, obviously, you want to get the result, and get your hand raised. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world. And I think that's what allows you to actually, it's kind of like reverse psychology, right? Because then you go out there and it probably increases your chances of getting your hand raised at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We look at, sports as kind of like this. It's always been like a microcosm for war without the large body count, thank God, right? But it's like but what you have is the soldier that's hard to go up against is the guy who says, today's a great day to die. And it's not a matter if he's trying to die in battle, but he's going to throw the kitchen sink at you. He'll put himself on the line, as opposed to the guy who's real scared and man, I got to get back home. Everyone wants to get back home, but it's the person who's willing to put it on the line. And you see this with like the Spartans 300 and Troy. You watch these movies, they were going in expecting not to come out, and they're more likely to come out with that attitude.
Yep, absolutely. And I think I got to give a shout out to my dad because, one of his favorite things that he kind of says to calm me down is like, surrender the outcome, right? At the end of the day, it's like when you go out there on the mat, if you can surrender the outcome, kind of like you're saying, I think that's the parallel that you can draw, right? Is that guy surrendering the outcome actually gives you a better outcome most of the time because you're just, you're out there and kind of paying homage to the actual art of the sport and, versus trying to focus on the results. And that's where you wrestle most freely and where you go out there and you compete and you do things that even surprise you when you walk off the mat.
Right. Now, is that something that you had that you always had, or was it something you developed over time? Like if you could go back in time and speak to yourself at a younger age, a lot of times mindset is a painful process of trial and error. But if you had a certain awareness of something, maybe it would have clicked a little bit faster. What would you tell yourself when you're younger, or even younger wrestlers right now who look up to you? There's many out there.
Yeah, I think that it's a little bit of both. Ultimately, I would say that this clutch gene, I've found to kind of be innate sometimes. Like I can turn it on and it kind of comes out of nowhere. But I've been able to harness it a little bit more as I've worked with, a performance psychologist and really been adamant or maybe intentional about seeking, that kind of development of my mindset. And so I think that what I would say to my younger self or to younger wrestlers is like, don't be afraid to try to develop that side. Right. I think that, a lot of people say like mental toughness is like something that you either you got or you don't. Right. And I would disagree and say that it's something that you can definitely build. And, the thing is it's kind of for me, it's been a two-prong approach. I think if I just tried to focus on the mental side and didn't focus on the training, it would be really hard for me to convince myself that I was prepared. Right. Ultimately, I think where a lot of wrestlers struggle is they put in a lot of the work, though. It's the inverse, right? They put in a lot of the work and they still struggle to question, like, did I do enough? And that's where I feel like my younger self is I was always questioning, like, and even to this day, I fight myself on this is like, was my preparation, like, could I have done a couple more practices, or did I go hard enough? Did I push myself to exhaustion enough times? And it's like, you can play that. And, I work with, I got to give him a shout out, Jared Spencer, performance psychologist. He's been, great since I've been able to work with him the last few years, and calls it the race to nowhere. And I think that a lot of young athletes kind of are on this race to nowhere, especially the ones that, you get the big results and then you find yourself in a slump or something and you attribute it to not training hard enough. And it's like, that's the race to nowhere. It's like, if you deep down whether or not you're giving it your all. And sometimes it's, you look at that and you trick yourself to say, if I only went a little bit harder, then that's why I'm losing. But sometimes it's just a matter of shifting your mindset and building that confidence to say, no, I trust in my training, and I trust that when I go out there, I'm going to be the best I can possibly be. And I'm going to do the things mentally and work on that mental muscle a little bit more so that, this physical muscle can kind of, I can take a little bit of the load off of its shoulders, because sometimes we try to load up the physical right side of it so much that it can only carry so much weight, when you can probably distribute some of that to the mental side. And that's where you get your maximum efficiency.
Right. It's always mind and body. The ancient Greeks always said that mind and body. It can't be one or the other. I mean, you could have all the confidence in the world. If you don't know how to play the violin, you can't play the violin. That's it. So you have to, the confidence needs to be built on your training, and then you have to trust in your training. And like you said, there's the surrendering of the outcome, but there's also an element of surrendering your training, because when we do second guess ourselves, did I do enough? Could have I done better? Yeah, you probably could have done better. Everyone could have probably did better. That's everyone in the world. There was certain little mistakes that everyone's made with their training. So it's a matter of surrendering our training too, and saying, even if it wasn't absolutely perfect, I could still get the job done. That's the story of everyone in history, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing. You just said it right there, right? It's like, do I have to be perfect? No. And that's a flaw to think like I have to go out there and wrestle a perfect match in order to win. And if you do that, then you got to get back in the gym and keep working on your skills, because, ultimately you don't want to have to rely on yourself to wrestle 99 to 100% perfect every match you go out there. Otherwise, you're not leaving much room for error. And the sport of wrestling is too complex, too dynamic to not expect error. Right.
Right. Well, no, that was my master's degree thesis on perfectionism and anxiety in wrestlers, that the wrestlers more perfectionistic, they got more nervous. So no, that's awesome stuff. So talk about your mindset, Coach. Dr. Spencer, obviously a great guy. I know him well. And talk how frequently would you meet with him, and how much, like roughly how much time would you put into that, or do put into that in terms of getting ready now, and especially like your plan moving forward towards the Olympics with that?
Yeah. So, I've been working with him now the last 2 years. When he came to Michigan when I was right after the Olympics. And I had that final year of eligibility. So, we've got to know each other pretty well, and it kind of, the frequency of our meetings just depends on me. That's what's great. And he's pretty good at reading people to where he can realize, about how many times I need to meet with him. And, I think our average is like, a couple times a month. We just try to just check in, and especially before the Worlds, we were making it maybe a little bit more frequently. But what I think that the biggest kind of, I don't want to or like the word I'm looking for, I can't really draw up, but why most people shy away from performance psychology, right, and this mindset thing, is because
the time is now to take your mindset to the next level with Wrestling Mindset. Make sure you go to our website, wrestlingmindset.com, and sign up for your free trial session today. Don't wait any longer. You want the mental edge right now. When you sign up for the free trial session, you're also going to get a copy of our free ebook, Building the Predator Mindset. This book has helped thousands of people build confidence, relax under pressure, get motivated, and build mental toughness in wrestling, school, and life. Make sure you sign up for your free trial session today.
They view it as like a therapy session, right? That's what most people think it is. And I've been very quick to kind of correct on that there's so much more to performance psychology than just like this therapy, venting, kind of feeling sorry for yourself approach. I mean, we work on so many different things as far as, like breathing tactics before a match, or, positive self-talk. And a lot of the, the conversations we have just completely switch depending on what I'm feeling that day, or what I'm, those few weeks leading up to our meeting. And so, I would say, the biggest thing is just, that we've really worked on is kind of some of the stuff I was talking about earlier, is just not putting too much pressure on the moment. And allows yourself to just conserve a lot of energy going out there, so you can put your energy towards what matters, which is those 6 minutes. And so, yeah, he's been great. Like I said, I want to give him a big shout out. He's been working with the Michigan wrestling team these last few years too. And you can see there's obviously some correlation in performances with, some of these guys getting over the hump. And it just goes to show, I mean, like I said, I'm a big advocate for this stuff, because I've seen it, work in my own career. And yeah.
No, absolutely. It's like we cross our T's and dot our I's on every aspect of the sport: technique, conditioning, strength, nutrition, rest, recovery. And then when it's mindset, why would we leave that to chance? Why do we believe we have all the answers when it comes to our mindset? You're right. Like, it's something that has to be addressed. And it's great to see that Michigan has always been believers in working on the mental part of the sport. And like you said, you could see it. The results speak for themselves. And between you and Michich and Mason, like we said before the show, 3 different countries, 3 world medals. That's a big deal. That's got to be a record.
Yeah, I think I would be confident to say that it's some sort of record. These days you can get a record for just about anything. But that's an impressive record. I was happy with that one. And I think that there's something to say too about kind of feeding off of other people's energy with your mindset, right? And I think that first day between Mason and I, kind of watching him wrestle, and then Stevan obviously doing what he was doing, we were all just feeding off of each other. And we talked about that after. It was like, what can we have it any better than this? Like, really, like, you get to watch some of your best friends competing, winning, like world titles, world medals. And it's like, it's so easy to me, that's like, it's a good type of comparison. I remember I read a quote that was like, comparison is not the thief of joy, envy is. And I totally agree with that because like at the world tournament, I found myself comparing myself, but in a good way. Like I was like, man, Stevan is raising the bar right now. Like this guy just beat an Olympic champ. I got to step, like I felt an obligation to be like, man, that I got to step it up tomorrow. And it was kind of like a good kind of comparison in my mind. Like, man, we're feeding off of each other right here. These are the guys that I grew up with, that I trained with. Like they're doing it. I should be doing it too. Why not? Right. And so it was a cool thing.
Yeah, and you're hitting on an important point there and a good distinction to make, because ordinarily we don't want to focus too much on what other people are doing, but sometimes it can be helpful. So it's not like an absolute rule, just like you're saying there. Talk about how you're able to do that effectively. As an example, let's say you're at a different competition. Let's say they're not doing so well. There is a certain amount of distance you need to have from that where your heart's with them, but you're emotionally detached. Talk about that.
Totally. And I had to, it's funny because you filter, right? And I think that's a skill in itself, is being able to filter in anything that's going to feed you, that's going to be positive, and then filter out anything that's going to like give you anxiety, that's negative, that's stress causing. And, I've been able to learn that pretty well because I've had brothers and cousins that I've competed alongside, for my entire life. And, watching my brother for some reason, win or lose, it just gives me severe like stress, right? And so it's hard because he was at the Worlds this year competing, alongside me, and I had to almost be careful to when he's going out there competing, because I know it's like certain people, right, that compete, that regardless, like you said, it's like even if they don't do well, or even if they are doing well, like I'm going to waste a lot of energy watching that because I have this certain people, right, to make you react differently. So I think that ultimately that was something that I've continued to develop. And now it's like almost like this filtering process where I know, like, okay, if somebody loses, I immediately am like, well, now I got to take care of it. Like I got to step up, right? Regardless of what they do, like, I know that it's on me now to pick it up. Or the same, right? And then you can flip flop into the same thing. Oh, they won. Well, it's still on me to pick it up now because now they won, right? So regardless, it's kind of having that same focus regardless of the outcome. Now, obviously, it's a little bit easier to do when you have the momentum to feed off of. But then I feel like it's just you're tapping into a different emotion, right? When that person that you care about, or one of your teammates loses, it's like, all right, now we just got to refocus. And now it's like, all right, I don't know if it's the right word is avenge, because that might be too emotionally triggering, but it's like, no, now I want to get the job done because, I want to kind of put the team on my back. Right. Like I always love that kind of thing of like, being able to put the team on your back. I think that's such a cool concept, that if you can be that guy, it's it's almost like you're the Iceman or something. You want to go out there and really live that character out.
Absolutely. It sounds like knowing what works for you, and then putting yourself there. So it kind of addressing it ahead of time, where because you had the experience doing this throughout the years, competing with family, but a lot of people don't have that. So they would have to address that ahead of time. What's going to work for me? What's not going to work for me? If they're doing well, this is how I'm going to feed off the momentum without getting too hyped up. If they don't wrestle well, this is how I'm not going to let it bother me, and I'll be able to either interpret it like, now I'll avenge, because that attitude could work for someone, but you could see it hurting someone else.
Too emotionally driven, right, in a sense. And then you go out there and you wrestle a little. You don't wrestle because you like you want to wrestle. You're going out there trying to wrestle for somebody else, and that's not ever a good thing.
Exactly. It's just knowing what works for you.
That's it right there. I think you said it. I mean, it's very personalized for me at this point. And I've experimented. I think that's important early on, or maybe, at tournaments that don't matter as much, as like, don't be afraid to switch up your routine a little bit, especially if you're in a slump. Like, it's like, I feel like we get so attached to these superstitions, or routines. And I think routines and superstitions are two totally different things, right? And you would know better than anyone else, right? It's like superstitions are a little bit harder to control. So for me, I got rid of a lot of my superstitions pretty early on. But as far as routines, I challenge my routines to say, it's me waiting in the locker room during college duels. Like I would spend a lot of time in the locker room before competing. Is that the right thing, or should I be out on the bench kind of supporting my team? And that was something that I had to figure out, because I experimented with both, or headphones in, right? Like, do I feel better when I listen to music before my matches, or am I better off just, putting those things in the bag and just kind of letting the environment around me be my noise? And those things you have to figure out early on what works for you, because if you don't, then you're kind of always guessing. and that goes into another thing that I am really big on, is like being able to journal and kind of self-reflect, and just being like really aware of what works for you, like you said, and what doesn't. And the more documentation you have for that, the less you're guessing.
Right, because especially with the mindset, it could be very abstract and theoretical, but once you put it down on paper, it becomes much more practical and tangible. And as wrestlers, we're hands-on people, even maybe more than the rest of the population, right? So it's so important to get that clarity by putting it down on paper.
Totally. Yeah. And that, the beauty of it is, like, I always tell people when they're like, oh, what should I write about? Whether I'm doing a camp or, working with some younger guys. And I'm like, honestly, like maybe I can give you a starting point, but it's the best part is whatever you think, right? At the end of the day, is like, that's where you usually start with journaling. It's like, just write down whatever you think is relevant. And whether it's after practice, a small win you had, or if it's after a dual meet, like, what was I like, what was going through my mind before my first match, maybe some positive self-talk, like some statements you can write down. It's so it's so like vast to what you can actually journal about. And I think that you see people getting successful results doing so many different things. So it's kind of cool to the fact that you're like, hey, there's not really a tried and true when it comes to this. Maybe there's a few, but it's not to say that the other ones, there's a lot of other ones that are very unorthodox that also work. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like you're putting your finger on a very important point. It's the start that stops most people. The biggest barrier is usually people just taking any action at all whatsoever. So it's like, before thinking about what's the exact correct thing to write down, as if that exists, 1.0 is just put something down on paper. Anything. Get to 1.0 before you start thinking about 2.0 and 3.0.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a big Atomic Habits guy. So that's the James Clear, right? That's the whole thing. If it takes more than 2 minutes when you start off, it's going to be hard to build that habit. So just make it really easy on yourself to start. That's my biggest advice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, your dad was obviously on our show a while back. Might have even been during COVID. Talk about some of the other lessons that you've learned from him.
When it comes to this whole mindset thing, he's always preached that this was one of the biggest parts of wrestling, and the power of I think the thing he's instilled in me that's taken me, to this point in my career, is just the power of belief. There was points and times where I had, coaches that it wasn't necessarily they didn't believe in me, but some of the things that I would say, right, is just as far as like my goals and whatnot. I don't know if it was about more being realistic, but it was my dad that was pushing those things to me, to be like, you can be, in 2020, you can be an Olympic champ. And like, I just, I believed it because, my dad was saying, like, he put this kind of power of belief in me that, like, hey, you can do anything, it's just all about your mindset and being able to truly believe and visualize yourself doing it. And, so yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I just found myself just continuing to believe that I could be doing these things, and maybe I fell a little bit short of some of these major goals that I've had in my career. But I would say that because of that, that's what's gotten me to where I am right now. It's just, on the cusp of, being the world champ, Olympic champ, NCAA champ, is because I've had that kind of belief system. And it's something that I've continued to refine throughout my career. So that's a big one, is the power of belief. And then I would say, another thing is just like, he's a big, like, Muhammad Ali guy. So we've kind of really tried to hone in on some of the greats from sports. He's really good at doing that, to like seeing like what kind of lessons those guys have and pass down to you. And that's a big part of my family, is like kind of having these major, like some of the greatest of all times as mentors, and kind of mimicking their style. And then finally, I would say just goal setting, like, just kind of teaching me the right way to approach goals, and realizing that there's a lot of work that has to be put in to achieve those goals. And so just like the right way to kind of goal set and approach that. And there's so many more, all right. We could probably have a couple hour session, but no, he's been kind of, an absolute major influence in my career. And then I can't go without saying I got to give a shout out to my mom, because
Just gonna say, I was like, we can't
she's
leave
the
that.
yin to his yang. Yeah, she's the yin to his yang. My dad's a pretty intense guy. And he when it comes to, I would say he was a pretty intense guy. He still is, but not to the level. He's understanding, right, that he's in a different role for me as an athlete, more of a consultant manager in my career. But my mom, she's just always she's the rock, man. She holds the fort down, and she this whole San Marino thing, she's been totally at the forefront, kind of handling. She's the controller. She handles all the the logistics and anything that goes wrong, right? She's kind of the one that puts out all the fires, gets everything organized, and ultimately she's really good at taking my mind off wrestling, which I think is just as important. She when we go home, I think she does a good job of kind of keeping us, my whole family, kind of away from the topic of wrestling. So me, my brother, and my dad can tend to talk about wrestling for hours on end.
I know how that goes. No, it's very important. It's always good to have that balancing force there. So talk about what else do you have coming up? Any shout outs you want to give? Where people can go to support you? Obviously, we're all Team Amine. How do we get the hats?
I know. Hey, that's something that I got to get on right away. Is I feel like the hats are the hats are in high demand, and we're low supply. We need to pick up the supply because the demand is there. No, yeah, I'm trying to think of coming up for me. We're planning out my schedule right now. Obviously, the big, pretty cool with San Marino, no wrestle off necessarily. So, just kind of preparing with Paris in mind. But just I want to give a shout out to Cliff Keen Wrestling Club, Michigan Wrestling. I just think we're continuing to build this program, and to where, I think at this point we are a national powerhouse, right? We finished top 5 endless times in the last 10 years, 5-10 years since I've been there. But Sean's just continuing to try to build it to where, we still have that national title, team title lurking, waiting in the trophy case. So I really think we're building something special, just continuing to build that on. And then that happens through, right, the Cliff Keen Wrestling Club, just being able to keep guys like myself, Mason Paris, and then bringing in a ton of other guys, Alex Daringer and all these guys from other schools, Jaden Cox, Ben Hannes, right? Just so many names, is huge to build the college program. So, we have something special, and a big reason why, I always give credit where it's due is I'm in the right environment, right? And that's huge for me and a lot of the results I have. So shout out to them. Shout out to my family. My sister even made it out to the world championships. She's my good luck charm. I was saying that because both times she came to these world events, I've qualified for the Olympics. So she's 2 for 2, her and her husband, Greg. So shout out to them. Shout out to my brother. All these people. I got too many people to name. We're going to have a whole podcast, but just the whole support system. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people don't speak about, is like, the success is there for me, but I've had some time to reflect and be like, dang, I got so many people, just supporting me, that like this system wouldn't work if you took one of these variables out potentially. Right. So, just very grateful for the support system I have.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yes. In any way we could help you, Team Amine, Cliff Keen, just let us know.
Of course.
Keep up the great work. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Gene. Yeah, appreciate you.